If you've looked at the headlines today, you know Washington is currently under a literal mountain of paper. We aren't just talking about a leak. We are talking about a seismic shift in public records, a scandal that has been whispered about for years, but which we are now confronted with concrete evidence. Get ready, because the Jeffrey Epstein files are calling into question not only politics, but the entire system. The U.S. Department of Justice has just released over 3 million pages, 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images related to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. It is one of the largest public disclosures in American history. But as we've learned from history, volume does not always mean clarity. Today, we're going beyond the shock value. We're going to look at what's actually in these files, why the redactions are causing a bipartisan firestorm, and what this means for the biggest names in politics, including Donald Trump. To understand why this is happening now, we have to go back to late 2025. Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a law born out of years of public pressure. It forced the government to open the vault on files from the Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell investigations that were previously kept behind closed doors. On the surface, it's a triumph for the public's right to know. But here's the nuance you won't hear in the 30-second news clips. According to reports from Euronews and others, the release is a chaotic mess. It's scrambled, it lacks a clear index, and it's heavily redacted. It's like being given a 3 million-piece puzzle where half the pieces are painted black. Let's address the elephant in the room: the names. These files mention dozens of public figures across business, entertainment, and politics. Naturally, the name Donald Trump appears thousands of times. But we have to be surgically precise here. According to the Associated Press, these mentions are largely contextual: flight logs, travel records, or social gatherings. Crucially, the DOJ has stated there is currently no basis for new criminal charges arising from this release alone. This is where the human element of interpretation comes in. Being mentioned in a federal file isn't a verdict of guilt. These records contain everything: unverified tips, secondhand gossip, and routine encounters. The media often rushes to a verdict, but the reality is much more gray. However, the sheer volume of high-level connections, not just Trump, but international leaders and CEOs, reminds us of how deep this social web actually went. President Trump hasn't stayed silent. He's already claimed this release vindicates him, arguing that his critics, specifically mentioning author Michael Wolff and the Epstein estate, were trying to weaponize the narrative against him. He's even threatening legal action. From a neutral perspective, this is a textbook example of how a single document can be used as a political shield by one side and a sword by the other. It's no longer just about the law, it's about the optics. Here is where the shale starts to crumble. The criticism isn't about how much was released, but how it was released. Lawyers for the survivors are furious. They claim that while powerful names are being debated, the identities of victims were improperly exposed due to sloppy redaction. Meanwhile, critics in The Guardian argue that the DOJ's slow compliance and heavy-handed blackout pens have violated the spirit of the Transparency Act. Equi? It's a paradox. The law was meant to build trust. Instead, the execution is raising new concerns about institutional transparency. If the government overshares the wrong things and undershares the right things, who is actually being protected? Let's step back and look at the bigger picture. We've seen this movie before. Think of the Pentagon Papers in '71 or the Watergate tapes. In those cases, the impact wasn't felt the day the files dropped. It was felt in the weeks and months after, as the public began to digest the contents and notice the gaps. Those releases didn't just reveal secrets, they forced a society to grapple with the complexity of power. We are in that same digestive phase now. The red flags regarding omissions are flying high. Public speculation is rampant, but just like Watergate, the real story might not be in the 3 million pages we have. It might be in the few pages that are still missing. My take? Don't confuse volume with a verdict. Massive leaks like this don't replace due process, they contextualize it. We live in an era where we want instant answers, but justice is a slow, grinding machine. These files provide the who and the where, but the what happened still requires verifiable prosecutable evidence. The historic nature of this disclosure isn't that it solves the mystery today. It's that it forces the institutions to remain under the microscope. So, what do we watch for next? First, will Congress demand the unredacted files? Second, will independent counsels find a thread in these 3 million pages that leads to a new investigation? And finally, how will this influence the public's perception as we move deeper into the election season? The legacy of the Epstein files isn't written in the documents themselves. It's being written right now by how we, the public, and the justice system respond to them. Thanks for watching. I'll keep tracking the updates as more of these pages are decoded. Hit subscribe to stay in the loop. Turn on notifications. Don't forget to like. I'll see you in the next one.